Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and I have a very special guest that I'm honored to have with us, the 59th Governor of Kentucky, Governor Paul Patton. How you doing, sir?
All right, Jameson, good to be with you. And let's talk politics or whatever you want to talk about.
Well, I'm going to age myself a little bit here. When you became governor, I was just in middle school, and and then the second term I was just getting into high school. So this is not too far in the past, but still, it's some history, and it fits right in here.
It's be 20 years in December, I guess. I will get there.
Yeah. So, a little bit more modern history than when we probably talked to about on the podcast, but it is a pleasure to have you on. I got a lot of good questions and interest about your book, which thank you again for sending us a copy. Very good book to read if you want to know the insides of your term and your life as well. So we'll get started with just a simple, typical question I always ask guests. Tell us about your Kentucky connection and so forth.
Okay, I've been a resident of Kentucky all my life. I was born in Lawrence County, near Fallsburg, a small village about 7 miles out of Louisa. Was raised there. My father was a one-room school teacher for a while and then got to work for the railroad on an engineering party. Mother had cooked in a lunchroom there at Fallsburg. Actually got electricity. We didn't get electricity till I was like 12 years old at the 7th grade. I was in the 7th grade before we got electricity at school. It was a 4-room school that's been torn down now, but so I went to Louisa High School and did all right. Went to the University of Kentucky as a mechanical engineer. Married a young lady while I was there, and her father didn't want me to take his daughter and his granddaughter off to some other place. So he said, "You come work for me for a couple of years. I'll teach you the coal business." And he said, "You can make a living at it. It's tough, but every once in a while you'll have a good year." And he said about once out of 10 years, it'll get good, but you got to be in it to take advantage of it. I was in it 20 years. I had 2 good years, but they were pretty good years, though. They worked out pretty good. And so I sold my company, had enough money to live on, didn't want to live on the world. And I got a big, long story. I got involved in politics, and in 1979, Carol Hubbard, a congressman from West Kentucky, contacted me about me running for governor and spending a lot of my money, and he would help me. Now, that's a long story itself, but other people told me, "Paul, you can't win, and if you did win, you don't know how to do the job." And so other people said, "Well, if you want to be governor, why don't you come back here and run for county judge?" Well, the guy said that didn't have any idea I'd ever be governor. He just wanted to get rid of the present county judge, which I did. And I told Judy, my wife, in March of 1980, I said, "Honey, I want to run for county judge in 81, run for re-election in 85, run for lieutenant governor in 87, and run for governor in 91. She said, "Whatever you want to do, I'll help you." And her family was well connected in Pike County. And so I won the judge's race. I ran for reelection. I ran for lieutenant governor. Spent 10 times more money than anybody had ever spent in the past and came third.
Oh.
Burton Jones spent twice as much as I did. So, uh, but in politics, uh, two or three people ask you to run, and that's a movement. And if four or five people ask you, that's a draft. So when I got re-involved in Wallace Wilkinson's November race, and people I traveled the state for Wallace, and people say, "Paul, why don't you run again? Why don't you run again?" I decided to run again, and I ran in '91 and won, and then I ran in '95 and won for governor, and then ran for reelection in '99. So that's a brief history of my um, virtue, my life trip so far. And let me go on to say
Uh-huh.
that when I left the uh, governorship, my son wanted to get in the coal mining business, and I worked for him. I was up to mine. I worked with clothes on, and I'd get dirty and all that stuff, but I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
But that didn't last too long. And in 2009,
Mhm.
we had a vacancy here at the University of Pikeville, and the college was at the Pikeville College at that time, and the college was in difficult
Mhm.
shape, down to 650 students in the undergraduate program. And so I told the chairman I'd been on the board for 35 years.
Mhm.
I told him I would do it for a month, for a year, see if we could save it. And I got a young man to help me, and I realized his talent, and I told him to get his doctorate degree, and I'd help him be president, and he succeeded me. So I was president for from 2009 till uh, 2013, 4 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm the chancellor. Now, as the chancellor, as I tell my friends, I'm like a Christmas tree ornament. I don't do much. I just hang around. But if you'll see the background, this is my office here at the University of Pikeville.
Mhm.
Uh, they established this for me and my wife across the hall to put our memorabilia in and to work in if I wanted to. So it's come in very handy. And as chancellor, I hang around here, and people come in and talk to me, and parents and students, and if they want to talk about race, money, or whatever. That's the kinds of things I do. Have no administrative responsibility and
Mhm.
don't want any.
Mhm.
I'm 86 years old. I'm old enough to brag about it. So, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great career. Sounds well, as you talk about in your book, a lot of interesting events and so forth. And I didn't mention the book's title, "The Coal Miner Who Became Governor," and that kind of leads me to the first big question because you didn't just own and operate coal. You got in there, right? I mean, it
For
wasn't
the
just
first, for the first, I started with one employee, uh, and then I finally opened up one mine and had about 12 employees. And I would work with them. I would work a normal work day and then do what little administrative work I had to do after hours. And we would go to work about 7 o'clock and get off about 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And I for 10 years I was a coal miner, and we in '69 we started making some money. It was sort of a hand of mouth up until then, but in '69 we made some money, and then in '72 and '73 we made some really good money, and then in '78 I guess I sold the company, and that's when all this started.
Mhm.
Yeah, my men knew I had a philosophy that I wanted to show my employees that I could do anything that they could do, and I couldn't do it as good as they could do it, but I would do it.
Mhm.
And I told if it's dangerous, I want to be there. I
Mhm.
worked one time we got a continuous matter covered up in a rock fall, and I went in the mine and I stayed 36 hours underground. And I did bring in a different crew every 8 hours, and we'd start getting that rock off of that mine, and we finally got it out. So I I've enjoy I enjoy work, not hard work anymore. But I enjoy being with people and keep 'em busy, and
Yeah.
that's what I do. My wife sends me out about 10:30 every morning, won't let me come back till 4:30. Give her a little personal time, and it works out pretty good.
Oh, well, that's good, that's good. Some of the things you talked about in the book too, especially as, when you were a judge executive there in Pike County, um, a lot of initiatives that went in and so forth, you know, talk about some of those real quick? I mean, it seemed to be very positive for the community and all that.
I did, and when Wayne Rutherford was the judge, he was in his 3rd term, running for his 4th term. Everybody thought he was one of the most progressive judges in the state. What he really was good at was bragging about what stuff he was going to do, and he really never did accomplish a lot of stuff. Of course, I did spend about a $250,000 to beat him, and he got more votes than he had ever gotten before, and I got twice as many votes as he did. When we started running, we had got a voter roll, and we had 25,000 registered Democrats in Pike County.
Mhm.
And when the election got here in May, we had 34,000. 9,000 people had either switched from Republican to Democrat or registered new. Uh, and when it was over, my friend Kelsey Friend said, Chief, we may have oversold you a little bit here. Running for reelection Wayne started running against me
Mhm.
immediately after he lost. I got 52% of the vote the second time.
Mhm.
But there was three people in the race, but I beat Wayne by about 10 or 12%.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's a lot of fun. Going down and beat. I'm a personal campaigner. Now I
Uh-huh.
rather you win elections on television anymore. Even then, now it's all television. My politics now is who's got the most money and tell the biggest lie, make it believable. That's what it is. When I was involved, the worst thing that happened to you was to get caught in a lie. The
Mhm.
printed press would really they'd go into it. Now they don't have the resources to go into it as the depth that they did back then. But at any rate,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the one thing I thought was, pretty interesting too. You talked about in your book. The first term as a Pike County judge was getting all these initiatives and getting things going, but then the second term you kind of had to get reelection. You kind of had to deal with, okay, what have you done? What have you done? What's on your record? And so forth. Like you were saying, with the previous judge, talking about getting stuff done is easy, but actually getting stuff done is a lot harder.
that's right. It can sound good, but in politics, it's not business. And I learned that. I was a better governor because I had been a county judge and I had learned that I had to listen to people and I had to listen to a fiscal court. They told me what I could do and what I couldn't do. And so I understood the function of the legislature. And I think I had a very good working relationship with the legislature, at least in my first term. The second term, David Williams took over the Republican took over the Senate and tried to be a hindrance, but he didn't at first he didn't know that much about how to get it done. He's learned after that, but I I never passed a major bill that we were supporting without getting some Republican votes because I also never did get all the Democrat votes.
Mhm.
Like as governor, I think most people remember that we made a revision in the way our colleges and universities operate, particularly the state, but to a certain extent the private ones. And uh, I lost uh, 3 or 4 Democrats, but I picked up 3 or 4 Republicans, and we
Mhm.
finally won that by 1 vote, I think, or 2 votes, maybe in the Senate. But we did a lot of other stuff besides that. We did a lot of environmental stuff and early childhood. In education, I worked on not just the colleges. I worked on the elementary and secondary schools. We saved the CARA Act, which was the greatest legislation in my lifetime. Was CARA. Not,
Mhm.
I think my higher education bill was the second most important. But also, we improved the adult education program, and we improved the early childhood program. So, my when I ran for governor, it was jobs, jobs, jobs.
Hmm.
Jobs are us. When I made my inaugural speech, I talked about education, particularly higher education. The staff and the press said, "Where'd that come from?" Well, I ran on jobs because that's what people want, but what they need is education to get the jobs. And
Yeah.
so we that was my first priority, and remained so all through my 8 years as governor.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, you talked about too in your book when you first got into um, politics, or well, not necessarily politics, but when the governor's office kind of became, uh, I guess, achievable or a goal of yours. So, what really got you to say, you know, what, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for the governor.
But like I said, Carol Hubbard had tried to convince me to get into it in '78, actually for the '79 election,
Mm,
and that wasn't feasible. But it certainly piqued my interest. If I had been contributing to politicians and got acquainted, I was a delegate to the '72 Democrat convention in Miami, and I was close to Whittle Ford and particularly close to Julian Carroll and to Martha Lane. John Brown made me chairman of the Democrat Party. Uh, I'd gotten pretty familiar, and I loafed with the legislature a lot. They used to have a thing called the legislative pre-legislative conference in Kentucky Dam Village down in West Kentucky, and I would go to that thing every December before the annual session or the biannual session. So I got to know the legislators in a social way pretty good, and I had I still got some good Republican friends that were, and maybe some, well, not very many have left in the legislature, but I had a lot of good friends that were Republicans.
mhm, mhm. Um, whenever, you well, so you kind of made history, as far as, you know, Kentucky governors go, 'cause, you were the first governor in about, what, 100 and
200 years.
200 years to, serve 2 consecutive terms, so that's pretty impressive, right?
Well, of course, it was you couldn't. Nobody else could ever have the chance to do that.
Yeah.
That guy way back there, they rewrote the Constitution. He served one term, and they wrote the Constitution, which didn't eliminate him from that term. So he
Mhm,
got 2 terms, but he was an omelet. Brereton Jones did a lot of good things, but
mhm,
one thing that he did, which was good for the state, which was allow the governor to have a chance to run for a second term. I sort of look at it as you need 8 years to do the job, but
mhm,
you get a 4-year review of how you've done. And
yeah,
that's what we're involved with now, Monday before the election. So I don't know when you'll broadcast this, but in this election tomorrow, uh, we're making judgments on Andy Bashir's record and whether Mr. Cameron can do a better job or not. Now, obviously, I'm for Andy, but that's one vote. I've already voted. I voted last Thursday. I think early voting is good.
mhm, mhm, yeah, well, you know, it's
One more thing before we get out there.
yeah,
My wife Judy was also a very active lobbyist for some causes that she cared about. Now, she could have elected for the more glamorous parts of being a first lady, and she did do some things, get involved in some those kinds of glamorous things, but mostly her passion was women and children. And she claims to have supported about 28 pieces of legislation on those 2 subjects. Now, I'm not going to argue with her, but she would go on the when she had a bill coming up, she would go on the floor of the House particularly, and if somebody was waving, she'd go over to them, whispering in their ear, and I said, "Honey, you can't lobby on the floor of the House." She said, "They'll throw you out." She said, "They'll just have to throw me out," and they never did. She had a lot of good friends. She had a lot of good Republican friends, like Steve Nunn and Robert Stivers and several others. She had a group of Republicans that would introduce a lot of her legislation, or at least support it.
Well, you were definitely a wise man for not arguing with her about it. So,
That's right.
yeah. Well, I found it interesting too with just the whole James Garrett. He was the last. I mean, he was the second governor, and he was the only one to get 2 consecutive terms for well, like I said, 200 some years. But you're right on the length of time. They need a bit more time to actually get some stuff together because you only have 4 years, and if you only have 4 years, you're at the blink of an eye, you're in and out quick.
And at that time, you only had 2 sessions to get your legislation introduced and passed. And sometimes it took that. And so you needed to get your program in place that first term. And then you need to concentrate on implementing and making it work the second term. So that's the reason that even though during my second term, the Republican Senate tried to be objectionable, I'd already gotten most of the things except the tax reform that I wanted to do. I'd gotten everything that I wanted to do except tax reform. And that still hasn't been done. And we've still got a screwed up tax system. But you need that second term to implement your program. So they didn't bother me too much.
Yeah, well, and that's it. I mean, I guess there's a lot of interworkings, and that's the one thing I did enjoy about the book is just kind of getting that inside view of Kentucky politics, or in politics in general. But like, give us, I guess, some thought on the process of getting something done, and getting something passed.
Let me talk about that book a little bit before we run out of time. That's a 9-year effort. In about 2014, the senior oral history person at the University of Kentucky, Jeffrey Suhanik, got in touch with me and said I'll do an oral history on it. He spent 4 years. We did 50 some interviews, 200 some hours of interview. Then it had to be transcribed. And then finally we decided, let's just write a book. And so we worked on that book. When we finished it was 600 pages. And he took it to University Press of Kentucky, and they said, we don't want a 600-page book. And I said, I'm reading right. I just finished a 600-page book. I don't want to get into another 600-page book. That was on Donald Trump. I'm reading on Mitt Romney now. I just started last night reading about. It's only about 400 pages. I thought maybe I could make that. But anyway, we cut it down to about 288 pages or something. But it's real fine print. I can't hardly read it. I usually maybe find ways to read it. But I'm proud of it. People have been very complimentary of it. We had it at the Kentucky Book Festival at Joseph Beth's bookstore in Lexington a couple weeks ago, and I think we sold more books than anyway. We sold out of books. I'll put it that way.
That's good. Yeah.
And I had one here at Pikeville last week, and we sold several books there. I got another 5 or 6 book signings around the state: Louisville, Frankfort, Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, around. So if anybody wants to get the book, you can get it from the internet. This company, this Hazard, has got a bookstore named Read, READ, Spotted Butte Bookstore. And they've got a website. You can get it on there, and you can buy those books. There's a hard copy and a soft copy. The hard copy is about $7. That's too much for a book. I never pay about $30. But when I get to $30 on a book, I say that's about enough. Well, I think that their soft cover on this book is $35. I think. Well, it's pretty expensive, but maybe it's worth it. I don't
know. Yeah, you can get them at University Press. I think you can also order them off there, and we'll put some descriptions and stuff if people are interested and want to order them. It's pretty good. I assume it also will be in libraries at some point as well, if not already.
That's up to the University Press of Kentucky. That's up to them. And just for That is not the University of Kentucky. It's
Hmm.
a independent group, and Pikeville University is a member of that board. We have a
Hmm.
lady here as a member of that board. So its main mission is to publish the work of academic scholars in Kentucky,
Hmm.
university and college professors, and people like and politics. So uh,
Hmm.
they're an independent agency. They're located in Lexington on Nicholasville Road, I think. But they're good people. I enjoyed them.
Yeah, yeah, and thank them for sending me the book and you as well to go through it and all that kind of stuff. And the book is available now. Um, and well, just good. I just really, I know people might think, well, that's pretty recent history, but still, it's pretty good. It's a good insight. So, and you touched on this earlier. If you were to compare, you know, whenever you ran for governor in your political career, what's the biggest difference between then and now?
Probably the biggest difference is this uh, social media, which I didn't have
Have
any
to deal
idea
with.
what it was. And we wasn't a factor then. It is a real factor in politics today, and the dominance of social media and the decline of the printed press. People just don't read newspaper. I read newspaper every day. I read a hard copy every day, but people could quit using that because they can go to the internet and you can get the Courier Journal, you can get Herald Leader, or you can get anything on the internet. And unfortunately, there's not that checking on the accuracy of a lot of this private stuff. Your national mainline press, they're real sticky about accuracy. Now they make mistakes, but they're very conscious of being accurate. They just don't have but people don't buy them anymore, and so they don't get their advertising revenue. So they don't have the resources to be as accurate and keep a politician in check. In television, you're dealing with if you get a minute on television, you're lucky, and you can't hardly uh, fact check somebody in a minute. So it's not as honest as it was back then, in my opinion.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and you think about how the important the newspaper was. If you go back 100 years, I mean, that was everything. Everybody put everything was in the newspaper as far as campaigning and so forth.
And let's go back about 200 years when the Constitution was written. It was all printed news, and most people were not really up to date on the national scene. So they had a pyramid of the national people would come to the state, and the state would come to the local people, and then the local politicians would come to the communities. Well,
Mhm,
let me go the other way. The people in the community didn't know what was happening in Washington. They knew what was happening in the county seat, and they would have maybe a grocery store owner or a preacher or somebody that they respected, and he kept track of the county people, and they'd ask him for advice and
mhm,
generally follow it. He'd ask the county people for advice, and he'd probably follow it, and the county people would ask the state people for advice and follow it. So you had a pyramid.
mhm.
That pyramid's gone. Now the politician goes directly to the voters in a 1 minute or a 30-second ad that, as I say, is not necessarily true, and certainly not detailed. And it's our Constitution is based on compromise,
Mhm,
but we have an attitude in this country today of my way or the highway, and our national government is not working, and
mhm,
the state government is getting that way.
mhm,
Now, uh, local government, the people got a better idea. I don't see this political divide as strong in local government as I do in state, and particularly uh, the national government. It's just not functional.
yeah, yeah.
I worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's and, getting on to the local scene, you know the people that you're voting I mean, you literally know the people you're voting for as county judge executive or, uh, you know, uh,
Yeah.
county clerk and
And
those things.
those people are well known. Generally, people know what they do.
Mhm.
And here in Pike County, at least, our local paper still publishes 3 times a week. And of course, they don't have the local television station to compete with, so they're doing fairly well. Their local papers in some places are doing. So a lot of them have gone out of business, but still they're doing pretty good.
Mhm. Yeah. What about one thing I got since this is a history podcast? Your contribution to Kentucky history. I think you had some legislation for that as well.
Well, I think that you're talking about things that I did that were historic.
Mhm.
Well, I think that the in our higher in our post-secondary education, we learned that there was a elitism to higher education and a downplay of vocational education. And we had the community colleges were run by the University of Kentucky, and we took consultants, and they said, well, probably we had technical schools, vocational schools that were run by the state, and we had community colleges run by the University of Kentucky. Our consultant said, well, the worst way, I got the hiccups, the worst way to run a community based education system is through the bureaucracy of state government. And the second worst way is through the bureaucracy of a university, a big university, a research university, because local education needs to respond to the work needs of that community. And the work needs in Ashland, which has had a deteriorating economy, and Bowling Green, which has got a growing economy, are different.
Mhm.
And the local institution needs to respond. If a big company goes out of business, they need to be responding to train those people that are out of work. And if a big company comes into Bowling Green and needs a specific skill, the community college needs to change in a year, in a month, to respond to that need. Universities and the state don't work that fast.
Mhm.
The universities are by nature, and I could go into that a lot, but I'm not going to, slow to change, and they just weren't responding. But yeah, but we found 3 other studies that had said that while the University of Kentucky has done a great job growing the community college system, the child had grown up. It was time to move out of the house, and but they didn't want to move out of the house. They liked that UK name, and the faculty liked being on UK staff, but they weren't on UK staff. The students liked being in a UK institute, but they weren't in UK. A lot of their credits did not transfer. They didn't realize that till they got through. A long story, but that was a real battle, and we won that battle by one vote in the Senate, and we got a lot of other things done that would have been very controversial,
Mhm.
except for the community college was the whole battle. And once we won that battle, we picked up a lot of other stuff that they didn't realize was in there. So we that was the most historic thing done. But we've had good environmental records. We had good early childhood records. Uh, so we wanted, we didn't want people to say to people in grade school, well, you need to go to college and in high school. But then when they got to graduate, they say everybody needs to go to college, but you need to go to a vocational school.
Mhm.
You wanted to say everybody needs to go to college, and colleges had teach medical school is vocational,
Mhm.
law school is vocational, education business is vocational. But they had UK managed to downplay uh, vocational education as it was then known. That's the reason we called it post-secondary education.
Mhm.
We wanted to get the message back to every high school student that you need to go to a vocational a career beyond high school.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be a 1 year program. It could be a 2 year program. It could be an 8 year program. It could be uh, We need bricklayers.
Yeah,
There's a lot of bricklayers out there that make more money than a college professor.
yeah,
Uh, we need college professors. We need diesel mechanics. We need doctors. So we need a wide variety of education. It's
hmm,
all post that you get that after high school. So we want to get rid of higher education and call it post-secondary education.
yeah, yeah. Well, my my brother is a lineman, and he had to do I think a year after out of school,
Yeah.
to get out of high school,
So
and it's
you,
a
you
it,
you got
you
your
know,
specialized thing that has to more training, but not in this high schools teach the basics.
yeah,
High schools around the country are pretty much alike.
hmm,
When you get to college, every college is unique. The University of Pikeville has some unique programs, and but no, we don't have everything. We don't have everything UK's got, but
hmm,
we've got some specialized programs like a medical school and a optometry college and getting a dental school. So those are pretty specific programs that demand good wages, but require a lot of post-secondary education.
hmm, hmm.
You know,
Um,
things.
oh yeah, well, yeah.
The 4
How many?
years that I was president here, we won 3 or 4 national championships in bowling and in NAI basketball, and I like football, so we can't let my wife get ahead of me. You gotta have a little bling in life.
Oh, that's good. Well, Governor Patton, that wraps it up for my questions and so forth. I really appreciate you coming on. Again, for those people who may be interested, the coal miner who became governor, you can get it at just about any bookstore you probably want to. You can get it online as well. I really enjoyed reading it and getting that insight into your time as governor and even that time before, and so forth. And people may not think it's Kentucky history because it was just 20 so years ago, but that's history, and it's a pretty good story that people need to
I
listen to
enjoyed
and
writing
think
it, and I
about.
appreciate being on and have the opportunity to talk about
Yeah. Well, again, if whenever you want to put out the second book, you're more than welcome, or just talk about Kentucky governors, whichever one you want. You're more than welcome to come back on, and we appreciate you coming on and taking the time to sit here and talk with us.
it. Great, Jameson. Be with you.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you, the viewers, the listeners. We want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.